My name is Jonathan Price. I live alone now in a narrow gray house in Bangor, Maine, though nothing about this story begins with solitude. There was a time when I had a wife and a son and a job that meant something. That was before the walls began to whisper, before the clocks turned against me. It started on the fourth night after we moved in. The house was old, a Victorian relic with creaky floors and crown molding that hid years of decay beneath its elegance. My wife Ellen had fallen in love with it instantly. She said it had character. She said it had history. I should have listened to my gut when I stepped inside and felt the temperature drop like something had slithered out the back door just moments before we entered. Our son, Daniel, was 7 years old. He had an explorer's heart and a scream that could tear wallpaper. The first night we slept there, he crawled into our bed just after midnight. He said he heard something knocking in the walls. We laughed. I said it was the house settling. Ellen kissed his forehead and told him to be brave. On the second night, the knocking came again. This time I heard it too, hollow thuds like knuckles rapping from inside the walls. I checked the heating vents. I checked the attic. I even knocked back. Nothing answered. I chalked it up to mice, old house problems. The third night, it escalated. We were asleep when Daniel screamed. His voice tore through the hallway and shot into my chest like a needle of panic. I ran into his room and found him pressed against the headboard, his little hands covering his face. He pointed at the wall near his closet. He said something was inside it, something tall and wrong, something that whispered his name over and over. I pulled open the closet. Nothing. No rats. No draft. No reason. But the air inside was colder than the rest of the room. Ellen wrapped him in a blanket and took him into our bed again. I told her I would call a pest control company in the morning. I did not sleep that night. The fourth night is the one I cannot explain. It was the first time I woke up at exactly 3:17 in the morning. I remember the red numbers on the alarm clock glowing through the dark. The bedroom light switch did not work. The hallway light did not work either. I moved through the house in silence, trying not to wake them. There was something in the air, a thickness, a weight pressing on my skin. The kitchen clock had stopped. The microwave screen was blank. Even the refrigerator was silent. The power had gone out, but not in the usual way. The street lamps outside still burned. Every house on our street looked alive except ours. As I turned toward the basement door, I heard it. A faint creaking, then a dragging sound. Something shifting across wood in the walls, not behind them, inside them. Something alive. I opened the basement door and looked down into the dark. The overhead bulb flickered once, then died. I do not remember going down the stairs, only that I found myself standing barefoot on the cold cement, staring into the black. There was a corner of the basement that had always felt colder than the rest. That night, it was freezing. I approached it slowly. There was a shape in the dark. At first I thought it was a shadow, but it moved. It was tall. Its shoulders hunched forward like broken branches. Its head touched the ceiling. I could not see its face, but I could hear it breathing. Deep, slow breaths that filled the room with a rhythm that did not belong to anything human. And then it spoke. It said my name. I ran. I ran up the stairs and slammed the basement door. I locked it and pushed a chair against it like I was 5 years old again. Ellen found me that way when the sun came up, sitting in the kitchen, still, in my boxers, pale, sweating. The lights were back. The clocks were working. She thought I had dreamed it. I let her believe that. I did not tell Daniel, but he already knew. That morning he told me he dreamed of a tall man in the walls. The same one from before. Only this time, it reached out to him. Its hand came through the wall like smoke and touched his chest. He said it whispered that it would be back at 3:33. That was the first time I heard that number. That was the first time I truly felt afraid. I kept Daniel out of school that day. Ellen disagreed, but relented when she saw my face. I had not told her everything. but enough to make her uneasy. She thought it was stress. She thought it was me falling back into old habits. I let her think that too. We drove into town and walked along the Penobscot River, trying to distract him. Daniel seemed fine on the surface, laughing when the ducks fought over breadcrumbs, running ahead toward the playground. But every now and then he would stop and glance back at me, like he was checking to see if I was still real, like he was making sure I had not turned into something else. We had lunch at Dysart's, while he worked through a grilled cheese. I asked him about his dream. He told me he did not think it was a dream. He said he woke up in bed and saw the shape standing near his closet. Same as before, only this time it leaned closer. Its arms came out of the wall like smoke, not like a ghost. He said it was darker than the room, a thing that swallowed light. It reached for his chest. It whispered his name and mine. Then it looked at the clock. He said it smiled without a mouth. I asked what time the clock showed. He said the same thing he told me that morning. 3:30. 3, not 3:32, not 3:34. Exactly that time. Back at the house, I took apart the microwave, the alarm clock, even the thermostat. Everything worked. No issues, no power surges. I called the electric company. They had no record of outages. According to them, our house had power the entire night. That night, I went to bed with every light in the house turned on. Ellen gave me that look she used to give me back when I came home smelling like whiskey. I did not care. I took a flashlight to bed, and I kept it under my pillow. I watched the red numbers tick forward. 3:15, 3:20. My eyes burned. The room was too quiet. My ears strained for sound. At 3:31, the lights went out. Not just in the bedroom. The whole house dropped into silence, like a curtain fell across the world. The digital clock froze. The red numbers held steady. 3:33. Something shifted in the hallway, a weight dragging across the floor. I could hear it moving slowly past the bedroom door. I slipped out of bed and eased the door open. The hallway was black, but for a faint blue hue leaking in from the window at the far end. The shape stood in front of Daniel's room. It had no face, no real form, but I knew it was looking at the door, my son's door. It reached for the knob. I shouted. I did not think. I charged. My body moved before my brain could catch up. As I reached the thing, it vanished. Not like it ran, not like it dissolved. It was there, and then it was not. The hallway was empty, the door untouched. The light flicked back on. The clock ticked forward. 3:34. Ellen was behind me, holding Daniel. Her face was white. She had seen it too. She would never admit it, but she had. I did not sleep that night either. The next morning I drove to the library, the old one near the university. I started with the property records. The house had stood since 1894. 3 families had owned it before us. I dug deeper, found the old newspaper archives. 2 incidents stood out. In 1978, a child named Bradley Hess went missing. He had been living in our house with his parents. The police never found him. No signs of struggle. He vanished from his room in the middle of the night. In 1993, a man named Ronald Dent, who had lived there with his wife, was found dead in the basement. The article described self-inflicted injuries, but no weapon was ever recovered. The wife was institutionalized 3 months later. She claimed the walls were alive. I drove home with a folder full of copies and dread, coiled like wire in my stomach. That night, I set up a camera in Daniel's room. I did not tell Ellen. I waited in the dark, my flashlight under my pillow, my ears tuned to every creak and shift of the house. At 3:31, the power dropped. The hallway outside Daniel's room filled with blue light. I rose from bed and opened the door again. The shape was there, but this time it was not alone. Something smaller crouched at its feet, a child. The outline of a boy, thin and gray. His eyes glowed faintly in the dark. He turned his head toward me and opened his mouth. No sound came out. The tall thing reached down and touched the boy's shoulder. The boy stepped forward, through the door, into Daniel's room. I ran. As I burst into the room, Daniel was sitting up in bed, awake. He was watching something in the corner. The shadow of the child stood there, motionless, waiting. I flipped on the flashlight. The moment the beam hit the shadow, it vanished. Daniel turned to me. He said one word. Bradley. The clock clicked over. 3:34. I replayed the footage from the camera 100 times. I wanted it to show nothing. I needed it to. I watched every second of that recording in Daniel's room, hoping the night had twisted my mind. But it was all there. At 3:31, the power blinked off. The clock froze at 3:33. Then something stepped into the frame. It was the boy, the same one I had seen beside the tall shadow. His image flickered at the edge of the camera like static on a broken television. He stood in the corner, facing Daniel's bed. His face was blank. Not hidden, not missing, just wrong. Like a face drawn by someone who had only ever seen humans in a dream. Then he turned, slowly, as if he knew he was being watched, and he looked straight into the camera, not by accident, not coincidence, as if he could see through the lens, as if he knew I was watching. He raised one arm and pointed. Then the video cut to black. No audio, no error message, just blank. I checked the camera. It still worked, fully charged. No corruption on the file. Just nothing but black after that moment. That afternoon, Ellen left with Daniel. She said she needed time. She was not angry. She was afraid. She said I was unraveling and she needed to protect him. I did not argue. I did not tell her what I had seen. I knew I had one night left. I could feel it in my bones. Something was coming, something final. I stayed in the house. I kept the lights on. I brought every flashlight, every candle, every battery-powered lantern I could find into the living room. I checked every corner of the house, every window, every door. I laid a hammer beside the couch. I was not going to run anymore. At 3:31, the lights died. The street outside turned black. Even the moonlight vanished. I sat in silence, holding a flashlight, waiting. I heard it behind me first. A breath, slow and steady. So close I could feel the air shift on the back of my neck. I turned fast and shined the light. Nothing. I stood, moved room to room. The sound followed, always behind me, never far. At 3:33, every clock in the house stopped. The walls began to move, not shake, move. The drywall pushed outward, like something pressed against it from inside. The sound was like wet paper, tearing. Then came the voice, low and broken. The kind of voice that did not pass through air but seemed to echo straight into your mind. It said my name, over and over. It said it was ready now. It said the boy was. Only the beginning. I screamed. Not words, just sound. I slammed my fists into the walls. The drywall cracked beneath my hands. I ran into the basement. The cold hit me like a wave. I slipped and landed hard. As I pushed myself up, I saw that the far corner had changed. The bricks had split open. A hole yawned in the floor, blacker than any shadow I had ever seen. Not absence of light. Something deeper, something waiting. I stepped closer. From the hole came a smell, damp, earthy. But beneath it, something sweeter, sickly, like rotting fruit and perfume. Then the voice came again. This time it was not in my head. It came from below. Help me. It was the voice of a child. Help me. I knelt at the edge of the hole and shined my light inside. The beam stretched down for what looked like miles. A narrow tunnel, dirt walls, carved by hand, or by something that used hands once. I should have run. I should have boarded up the house, burned it, left town. But instead I did what it wanted. I climbed in. The tunnel was just wide enough for my shoulders. I crawled on my elbows, dragging my legs behind. The deeper I went, the warmer it got. I began to sweat. The air was thick with dust and something else. Movement echoed ahead of me. Something crawling just beyond the light. I kept going. Minutes passed, or hours. Time bent in that place. I reached a chamber at the end. The tunnel opened into a small circular room of stone. In the center stood the boy. Bradley. He was not a ghost. Not quite human, either. He looked up at me with eyes that had no whites. Only black orbs, like glass. He smiled. The corners of his mouth tore wider than they should. A sound escaped him. Not a word. A sound that made my ears bleed. And then I saw the others' faces in the stone. Dozens of them, imprinted into the wall like fossils. Their eyes moved. Their mouths trembled. They were alive. I turned to crawl back. The tunnel was gone. Just a blank wall. Solid earth. The boy stepped forward. He reached out and touched my forehead with one finger, and I woke up back in my living room, on the floor. Bleeding from the nose, the hammer beside me. The candles melted down to wax puddles. The lights flickered back to life. The clock ticked forward. 3:34. Ellen called the next morning. She said Daniel had a fever. Said he woke up screaming my name. Said he drew a picture of the house, our house, but it was on fire. The fire came from inside. I did not sleep the next night. I began digging beneath the basement. I spent the next 3 days beneath the house. I did not answer calls. I did not check my email. I told Ellen I was sick and needed space. She did not press. Daniel was still having nightmares. She said he kept asking about the boy with the glass eyes. I lied and told her he must have seen something on television. She knew I was lying. She just did not want the truth. The hole in the basement had sealed itself. No trace of it remained. No cracks in the floor. No gaps in the bricks. But I remembered exactly where it had opened. I took a crowbar to the concrete and started digging. At first, I found nothing but dirt and broken stones. But 12 hours in, my shovel hit wood. I cleared the soil away and uncovered a trap door. It was old, rotted, covered in strange symbols, burned into the grain. The kind of shapes your eyes want to avoid. I could not look at them too long without feeling like something was crawling behind my eyes. I pried it open. There was a ladder beneath, metal rungs driven into the dirt wall. The air that rose from the hole was hot and thick, not like anything from the earth. It smelled like a place that had not seen light in centuries. I climbed down. The passage twisted through the ground like a vein. Dirt gave way to stone. Then the stone became brick. The tunnel ended at a heavy wooden door with no handle. Just more of those blackened symbols carved deep into its surface. I pressed my hand against it. It opened. The room on the other side should not exist. It was too large, too perfect. A dome of smooth stone, lit from above by a light that had no source. The walls were lined with shelves, and on those shelves sat clocks. Hundreds of them, all different shapes and sizes. Grandfather clocks, pocket watches, digital alarms, sand timers. They all ticked in unison. They all showed the same time, 3:33. I'd stepped into the room. The air hummed. The ticking grew louder. I felt something stir inside my chest, a vibration that moved through my bones like a tuning fork. I took a step forward. Every clock stopped. The silence dropped like a stone, and then I heard the whisper. It came from behind me. But when I turned, there was nothing there. I turned back toward the clocks. They had changed. Now they all showed a different time, 3:34, but the ticking did not return. The silence stretched, then came the scream, not from a single voice, but hundreds, all at once. A deafening shriek that poured from the walls like steam. I dropped to my knees, covered my ears. Something moved between the shelves. Something tall. I tried to run. My legs would not move. I felt hands grip my shoulders. cold fingers like stone. I was yanked backward. I woke in the dirt tunnel, gasping, shaking. The door behind me was gone, only packed soil and brick. I crawled out and staggered back into the basement. My arms were covered in bruises, finger marks. My palms were burned, tiny clock hands embedded in the skin like splinters. I ripped them out, blood running down my arms. I did not go to the hospital. I could not explain it. I slept on the floor. That night, the lights on, a baseball bat in one hand. I dreamed of the room, the clocks, the ticking, the scream. When I woke the next morning, the bat was gone. In its place sat a clock I had never seen before. A small gold pocket watch. Its surface was smooth, polished, no markings, only the time, 3:33. That afternoon, the police knocked on my door. A boy had gone missing, 3 blocks away, vanished from his bed during the night. His mother said the power had gone out, said she woke at 3:33. She thought it was just a coincidence. I did not. That night, I waited in the basement. I sat beside the ruined dirt hole. I held the pocket watch in my palm at exactly 3:33. It began to tick, and something knocked on the wall beside me, not from the other side, from inside. I placed my hand against the bricks. They were warm. The knocking stopped. Then came a whisper, so quiet. I almost missed it. "Let me in," whispered back. Why, the answer came in the voice of my son. "Because he is waiting." Then the wall cracked. The crack in the wall widened over the next 2 nights, not like a fracture in brick or plaster. It spread like a wound. A dark split across the surface, leaking warmth and whispers. Each morning I found it larger, wider. By the 3rd night, I could press my head against it and hear movement on the other side. I stopped sleeping. The pocket watch never left my side. I tried locking it in the shed behind the house. It returned to my nightstand. I tried burying it under the old oak tree. I woke up with it in my hand. No matter what I did, it always found its way back to me. At exactly 3:33, it would begin to tick. Just once. A single mechanical heartbeat. Then silence. I began researching again. This time I did not go to the library. I drove to Orono. There was a man there who taught comparative folklore and obscure religions at the University of Maine. His name was Dr. Emery Shaw. I told him I was writing a book. He was suspicious but curious enough to listen. I asked about time, about folklore that involved moments when reality shifted. He told me about thin places, gaps between the physical world and something older, places where time folds, where rules break. He asked what time I kept seeing. When I said 3:33, he stopped taking notes. He told me there was a belief in certain esoteric texts that referred to something called the hollow hour, a sliver of time that exists between seconds, a space that should not be, a place where things that were left behind still wait. Not ghosts, not demons, echoes of choices, echoes of violence. He said it only appeared to those who had been marked, and once marked, you could not ignore it, you could only answer. I asked how to make it stop. He looked at me and said one word, blood. I left his office without another word. I never went back. When I returned home, the crack in the basement had grown wide enough to see through. I saw a corridor, not a tunnel of dirt or brick. A long stone hallway, arched like the inside of a cathedral. The air that leaked through smelled of iron and smoke, and something older. Something like wet ash. At 3:33 that night, the wall opened fully. The clocks in the house stopped again. The air thickened. My skin turned cold. The hallway was open, and something stood at the far end. It was not the tall figure. It was the boy, Bradley, but not the way I remembered him. He was older now, his face pale and drawn, his skin stretched, thin, over sharp bones. He wore a dark suit, hands clasped in front of him like a mourner. His eyes were still black glass, He smiled. He said my name, not aloud, but in my head, like a thought I never wanted to have. Then he stepped aside, and the tall one came forward, the shape that had haunted Daniel's room, the one that whispered through the walls. Its body rippled like a curtain underwater. Its head scraped the top of the arch. Its arms were too long, its hands too many. It did not speak, but I felt its message. It wanted Daniel. It had always wanted Daniel. It had followed the fear, the blood, the weakness. That was the price. That was the pact. Not one I had made. One someone else had made, long ago. And I was standing in the same place now, facing the same choice. I closed the basement door and sealed it with 6-inch bolts. I boarded the windows. I called Ellen and begged her not to bring Daniel back. I told her the house was sick. She said she already knew Jod. She had seen something too. She had not told me everything. Daniel had spoken in a voice that was not his. One night he had drawn a picture of our basement. There was a face in the wall, my face, screaming. I told her to take him away from Maine, go south, stay with her sister in Charleston. I promised I would fix it. I did not tell her I was lying. That night, I took a knife and returned to the basement. I waited until the watch began ticking. Then I cut my hand. The blood fell onto the stone, and the wall opened again. The wall opened wider than before, no longer a crack or a sliver of rot in the brick. It was now a threshold. The old stones had peeled back like skin. Beyond it, the hallway stretched forward, framed in black stone and pulsing with dull red light. The ticking returned, echoing across the stone like dripping water in a deep cave. I stepped through without hesitation. The moment I crossed the boundary, I felt the air change. Not cooler, not warmer, simply wrong. Like breathing a memory that was not mine. I walked. The passage turned downward, the walls narrowing as I descended. Each step felt heavier. I was not just moving down, I was being drawn. At the end of the hallway was a door. It was carved from a single piece of black wood. No seams, no hinges, just a surface covered in symbols. The same marks I had seen on the trap door. My fingers itched as I looked at them. I did not touch the door. I did not need to. It opened as I approached. Inside was a room the size of a church. The floor was polished stone. The walls were lined with candles that burned without heat. And in the center of the room stood a mirror. It was 10 feet tall. Its surface was liquid, like water held in a frame. The boy stood beside it. Bradley, no older now. His face blank again, unreadable. He pointed at the mirror. I stepped forward. The mirror shimmered and showed me a different house. It looked like mine. Same layout, same wallpaper, same basement stairs. But there were differences. Small ones. The mirror version had no photos on the wall, no furniture, only shadows. The air inside it was gray, and the windows were blacked out. The boy spoke in my mind. "This is where the others." Levi asked him who they were. He told me they were the ones who broke the hour, the ones who let the scream escape. Each house built on this mark was a doorway. Each doorway fed the hunger. I asked, why me? He said because I had seen it, because I had heard the knock, because I had answered. The mirror shifted. Now it showed another man, alone, sitting in a different house, but the same basement, same crack in the wall. He was holding a photograph of a girl, his daughter. He was crying. He looked up suddenly, right into the mirror. Into me. I stumbled back. The boy's voice again. He let it take her then. Another house, another man, another child missing. The mirror spun, through images, so many, all the same. The houses were spread across the country. Boston, St. Paul, Phoenix, Sacramento. They had different roofs, different colors, but the same basement, the same time on the clocks. 3:33. Every house was a seed. Every house fed the same thing. And I was standing at the root. The boy stepped closer. His eyes were no longer glass. They were mirrors. He told me I could end it, but only if I took its place. The thing needed a voice, a vessel. He said it had waited for one. Who broke the hour? One who remembered the scream. I asked what would happen if I refused. He said, the hunger would grow. The next child would not be taken. It would be remade, like him. He pulled something from his coat, a photograph. Daniel, sleeping, his hand over his heart, a line of red across his palm. I screamed. The sound bounced off the stone, but the boy was already gone. The mirror was dark. The room was empty. I ran back through the hallway. The stones twisted. The air shook. The walls pulsed like veins. I reached the threshold, just as the wall began to close. I barely escaped, back in the basement. I collapsed. The pocket watch ticked twice, then fell silent. I knew now that the house was never haunted. It was never cursed. It was a mouth, and it was hungry. The map I found behind the mirror would not leave my mind. It had shown more than locations, more than coordinates. It had shown a pattern. Each house sat in a precise spiral, a design etched across the country like a brand. The center of the spiral was in Vermont, a town I had never heard of. Heartwood. I drove there that night. The roads were empty. The sky a blanket of iron. My GPS cut out 10 miles from town. The radio played static. I drove by instinct and the pulsing in my chest that guided me like a second heartbeat. Heartwood was small, a general store, a single church, 10 houses, maybe fewer, all of them sagging with age, rotting porches, dead trees, no sound but the wind, and at the end of the main street stood the first house. I knew it without being told. It was older than the others, 3 stories tall, windows like hollow eyes. The porch sagged inward like a mouth caving in on itself. There was a brass plate beside the door. No name, just numbers. 333. I stepped inside. The air did not move. Dust lay on everything in thick carpets. No signs of life, but no signs of decay either. Like someone had frozen the house in place. I walked through the rooms, each one exactly as I had seen in the mirror. The same wallpaper, the same angles, the same narrow stairs leading to the basement. I followed them down. The door at the bottom was open. Inside, the basement was not stone, it was wood. Every surface paneled in old pine, dark with age. In the center stood a table, and on the table sat another clock, a tall one, carved by hand. The time read 3:33. There was someone sitting beside it, a man. Old, thin. His skin hung from his face, like wax melting off bone. He turned as I entered. His eyes were black, not from shadow, from ink, liquid black that shimmered in the candlelight. He smiled. I have waited for you, he said. His voice was a whisper, but it carried like thunder. He told me his name was Thatcher. Bell said he had built this house in 1901, said he had lived inside it for over a century, not by choice, but by contract. He was the first to break the hour. He told me he had lost his son in a fire, said the boy had died screaming, and for 7 nights after, he heard the scream replaying in the walls. On the 8th night, the scream changed. It spoke, it offered, bring me another child, and I will return what you lost. And he did. He took the neighbor's boy, a toddler, still learning to walk. He brought the boy to the basement, opened the crack, fed it. The fire had left nothing of his son's body, but the next morning, the boy was there, whole, breathing, but not the same. His skin was cold, his eyes wronged, his voice too quiet, and that night, the clocks stopped again. He realized, too late, what he had brought back. His son had not returned. Only the echo of his pain. Only the shell of what had been lost, and the thing behind the wall was not finished. The hollow hour had tasted grief. It wanted more, so Thatcher stayed. He kept the time, kept the door closed, marked. Others like me People in pain, people on the edge, people who would listen when the scream came. I asked why me. He looked at me with sadness. Because your son had already heard the voice, because the hour had already cracked in your blood. Asked what I could do to stop it. He said the house had to be burned, but not just this one. All of them. Every house built on the spiral, every mouth in the dirt, all of them had to be silenced before the hour reached its center again, before the scream became permanent. I asked how long. He pointed to the clock. It was ticking now, but backward. Counting down from 3 hours, he said. When the final second struck, the hour would fold open and the choice would be finally there. Let it take the children, or take their place. He handed me a journal. It was filled with names, addresses, maps, instructions. He told me I would not be alone. There were others like me, marked, but not broken. If I could find them, we might have a chance. I turned to leave. He stopped me and said 7 final words. You must kill the boy. Before midnight, Ty drove through the night with the journal on the passenger seat, the pages flapping in, the wind from a broken window. The names blurred as I read them, each written in trembling ink, some with dates, some crossed out. Many were dead. A few had addresses still intact. I started with the closest. Rebecca Lorne, age 49, Maine, a nurse who had lost her daughter in 2009. The entry beside her name was different from the others. It had a single word next to it. Refused. I found her in a trailer outside Millinocket. The air smelled of pine and rust. I knocked 3 times. She opened the door on the 4th dot. Her eyes were tired, but sharp. You heard it too, she said. I told her about the house, about Daniel, about the mirror and the boy with the black eyes. She nodded after every sentence. She made tea. Neither of us drank it. She showed me her mark, a scar across her palm, the same as mine. She said it never healed, that it pulsed when the hour approached. She told me the hollow hour was not just time, it was memory, a prison for grief so dense it formed shape. She had refused a bargain and paid the price. She had seen her daughter again, but only once, through the wall, not as a child, as something older, hollow, watching. She said she would help me. She pulled out a rifle wrapped in cloth. Next name was in Massachusetts. Calvin Reed, age 65, former teacher, lived in a house that had been silent since 1982. When we arrived, he was already waiting on the porch. He showed us a pocket watch, same as mine, said he had never thrown it away, that it always came back. He kept the clocks in his house upside down, said it slowed the ticking dot. He agreed to come. Third was Angela Mears, Baltimore. She had scars on both arms, said the hour tried to take her, but she hid inside it instead. She had lived 2 weeks in a folded second before clawing her way out. Time had not passed for her, but everyone she loved was gone. She only asked one question before joining us. Do we burn it? All the journal mapped a route. The spiral tightened around. A single date, October 3, 1S, Halloween. Something older. The night the veil thinned. The night the scream could cross. We had 3 days. We divided the list, 20-7 houses left, some abandoned, some still full. I made the mistake of returning to mine. The basement was sealed, but the house was not empty. The hallway and the wall had grown. I could hear footsteps. Now, Daniel's voice echoed through the vents. He was not here. He was still with Ellen, but the house had remembered him. Every breath, every laugh, and it played them on a loop like a broken film. I almost stayed. Rebecca stopped me. She said that was how it worked. The house fed on memory. It used it as bait. We burned it that night, drenched the walls with gasoline, watched it scream through the flames. But as the fire reached the basement, I heard the ticking again. 3:33. Backwards, the hour was coming. We burned 6 more houses over the next 2 nights. Each one fought us, Each one had something inside. Some had mirrors, some had children, who were not children anymore. Some had clocks that laughed. Angela was nearly taken in. Oregon. The wall split open before she struck the match. She saw her sister inside, dead since childhood. The house whispered that she could bring her back. All it wanted was a name. Angela lit the fire. Anyway. But she did not sleep that night, and the next morning, her reflection did not blink. We knew the final house was in Pennsylvania, buried in the woods near a place called New Florence. It was built in 1933, one of the first mouths. The journal said it was the origin, where the scream was first caught. The house was bigger than the others, 3 stories, 12 rooms, and a basement carved from stone. Inside we found walls covered in handprints. Small children's, each pressed in red. Some fresh. In the center was a door, marked with my name, written in blood. The hollow hour had waited. It was almost time. The final house stood in absolute silence. No wind, no trees, not even birdsong, as if the land itself held its breath. We circled it with salt, though Rebecca said it would not matter. The hour was inside now, awake and listening. The walls pulsed gently, like something breathing beneath the skin of the wood. We stepped inside at dusk. There was no furniture, only the sound of clocks. Every room had one, some mounted, some broken, all ticking at once, except backward. We moved carefully, lighting the corridors with oil lamps, marking our path with chalk. The stairs to the basement descended farther than any of the other houses, at least 4 stories down. No windows, no light, and at the bottom, a door made of stone. Angela stepped forward and placed her hand against it. The mark on her palm lit up faintly, a red glow beneath her skin. She said a word I had never heard before, and the door opened. The room inside was not a basement. It was a cathedral. Stone arches stretched above us. Black candles burned along the walls. A circle was carved into the center of the floor, ancient symbols spiraling inward. And at the center of the spiral stood the boy Bradley. He looked the same, but he was not alone. Behind him, rising from the stone, was the hollow hour. It had no true shape, just layers of shadow peeling from the air, faces flickering in and out of view. Thousands of them. Some screaming, some silent, all of them trapped in the moment of their final breath. The boy spoke. His voice echoed from the walls, from the floors, from inside our own heads. You brought the fire to latch Rebecca, raised the rifle. She aimed at the boy, but the gun melted in her hands. The power was stronger here. Angela lit the torch. The flame turned blue. She stepped forward, but the power responded. It opened the mirror, and out stepped her sister. She looked real alive, even wore the same clothes she had the day she drowned. Angela froze, her hand dropped. The torch fell and rolled away. Calvin screamed, not words, just pain. The walls bent inward, the clocks began to spin, all of them backward, then stopped. 3:33. The room split, open 1,000 corridors stretched into darkness, each one a memory. Each one a scream. I saw my wife. Ellen. She was on the floor, blood on her temple, crying out for help. But when I ran to her, she vanished. Then I saw Daniel, not the real one, the one the house remembered. He stood in the corner, hands folded over his chest, whispering, "I am still here." Tried to reach him, but the boy stepped in front of me. He said, I could still trade one life for another. The hour only needed balance. If I chose someone else, anyone, Daniel would be free. Rebecca shouted, "Do not believe it," but the scream was growing. The walls cracked. Blood dripped from the clocks. Time was collapsing. I saw the spiral in my head. Every house, every family, every scream. They were all pieces of the same wound, and the only way to close it was to cut it deeper. The boy stepped closer. He held out his hand. I could end it. He said, "Just take his place. Let the hour live inside me." Voice whispered behind me. Do it, Tit, was Daniel. The real one, somehow. I knew it. Not a memory, not a shade. Him, still alive, still waiting. I dropped to my knees. I reached into my coat, pulled out the pocket watch. Its hands were spinning now, a blur of silver. I pressed it into the center of the spiral, and I spoke the final word from the journal. The hour screamed, not with rage, with hunger. The cathedral shook. Angela ran to the torch, lit it, threw it into the spiral. The fire roared. Rebecca screamed for me to run, but I could not move. The hour was inside my chest now, squeezing, whispering, promising. I felt Daniel's voice again, just a whisper, a single word. Dead end. Then the fire reached me. The fire should have consumed me, but it did not. It passed through like smoke, like memory, like something that could burn only what was real. And I was no longer certain I was the hollow hour, folded inward. Its faces screamed once more, then cracked like porcelain and vanished. The spiral pulsed one final time. Then the cathedral collapsed. I woke outside in the woods. The house behind me was gone. Only ashes remained. Rebecca sat nearby, blood on her hands, face empty. Angela was lying on the ground, her chest barely rising. Calvin was gone, nothing but his watch left behind, still ticking backward. Rebecca helped me to my feet. She asked if I remembered what happened. I did. I remembered. Everything. The scream had not left. It had only moved. We buried what was left of the journal that night, wrapped it in salt, buried it in consecrated earth, scattered the ashes of the last house around it. Angela whispered something over the grave. Then she walked into the trees and never came back. Rebecca and I returned to Maine. She said the mark on her hand had faded. Mine had not. It had grown darker. I kept hearing ticking in my ears. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the spiral. 3 days passed. Then the letter arrived. No return address, just a drawing of a clock. The hands read. 3:33 inside was a photograph. Daniel. Older. His eyes wide with terror. Behind him was a wall of mirrors, and in each reflection was a different version of me. Some crying, some smiling, some with black eyes, and on the back of the photo were 4 words. He never left the hour. Rebecca wanted to burn it. I said no. It was a message, not a warning, a call. I waited until midnight. I opened the mirror in the hallway. The glass rippled like water. I stepped through. The hallway inside was endless, every door marked with a name. I had never spoken. Every step I took sounded like a heartbeat. I found Daniel in the 12th room. He was asleep. He looked the same, but as I reached for him, he opened his eyes, and they were mine. He smiled. I heard the ticking begin again, faint, steady, behind me. I turned. The hollow hour stood waiting, no longer a shape, just a presence. It spoke without sound. You chose not to. Rooney nodded. It asked me the final question. Are you ready to carry it? Said yes. Not for me. For him. I took Daniel in my arms. The world twisted, and I was back in the house, in Pennsylvania. Alone. The mirrors cracked. The spiral gone. Only one clock remained. My watch. It had stopped. No hands, no numbers, just silence. I went home. Ellen was there. She held Daniel. He was real, breathing, laughing, but he never spoke of what he saw. And sometimes, when the lights flickered, he looked at the walls and whispered something I could not hear. We moved to New Mexico. No clocks in the house, only sand, only wind, but I still feel it. Sometimes the tick, the pressure behind the eyes, the pull of memory. And every year, on October 31st, I wake at the same time, 3:33 and I listen. To see if the scream has found me again, but so far, it has not. Or maybe it already has, and I am just waiting for the second hand to move.